I want to start by bringing in Jim Rickards. Jim, thanks very much for joining us here. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about something else, but we certainly appreciate you switching gears with us at this late hour. And you've spent time in Saudi Arabia. You've been over there. You know how the kingdom does business. First, let's talk about, will there be any kind of leadership vacuum?
Well, no, there won't be a vacuum. They're very, very concerned about the succession. Obviously, I've thought a lot about that. And I've been to Riyadh, been to the region quite a bit, recently returned from Jordan. The way to think about it is there's sort of three levels. There's what's going on in the kingdom, what's going on in the region, and then how does this affect things globally. Within the kingdom, it's very conservative. The succession is already set up. They have not only a new king, Salman, but a new crown prince, Mukrim, by the way, who's very close to the United States. He was head of intelligence. His working relationship with U.S. intelligence is very strong. So that's sort of conservative and solid. That succession would go smoothly. Regionally, it's more difficult because Saudi Arabia is in a kind of war, a covert war, if you will, with Iran right now. Part of the lowering of the oil prices, certainly they want to damage the fracking industry in the U.S., but they also want to poke a stick in Iran's eye around Iran's nuclear program. Now, where this comes to a battleground is in Bahrain. Bahrain is really controlled by Saudi Arabia, but has a large Shiite community. So will Iran use this as an opportunity to try to destabilize Saudi Arabia or cause problems in the region by stirring up Shia opposition in Bahrain? So that's the one flashpoint I would work. On the larger stage, of course, the relationship with China. China is now one of the largest buyers of Saudi Arabian oil, and is Saudi Arabia backing away from the dollar, perhaps thinking about pricing oil in yuan or other currencies because of that relationship. I think a big tell will be whether President Obama goes to the funeral or not. Of course, he did not go to Paris for the Charlie Hebdo
and he was
march,
roundly criticized for that, too, and the administration came out and apologized. Do you think that's going to have any effect in this?
Yeah, I do. I think he's in a no-win position. If he goes, that's a sign of respect, and it is a very important ally, so it makes sense for the president to go, but of course he'll be criticized. Why did you go to Saudi Arabia and not go to Paris? If he doesn't go, on the other hand, that's a little bit of a slap at our Saudi allies. So he's in a no-win situation. We'll see how it plays out, but I do think it will be significant if he goes, and that's sort of a good sign. As I say, the relationship is strong, but it's under stress because Obama has announced détente with Iran, and these nuclear negotiations are far along. The Saudis are not happy about that.
Let's talk about, you touched upon the fact that China is one of the chief buyers of oil coming out of Saudi Arabia, but China's demand has been pared back. And there was a time when Saudi Arabia and OPEC nations could really put fear across the globe in terms of the economy by what they would do with their producing oil, exporting oil. But that changed this year with the U.S. being able to produce so much through shale. Has Saudi Arabia lost any of its economic power, do you think, internationally in terms of how it could affect the global economy?
I don't think so. I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a lot more production, a lot of it coming from shale and fracking, and there's a lot, or at least slackening demand because China's slowing down, Europe's slowing down. So they're just normal supply and demand would dictate a lower price of oil. But what's going on is a little more intense than that. Saudi Arabia has actually done an optimization program, and they've asked themselves, what is the price of oil that puts the frackers out of business, but doesn't hurt the kingdom too much? That number is $60. Now, obviously, we're around $45, $50. There's a little bit of an overshoot there, but I don't look for oil to go back up because it's going to take a year to really shut in the fracking industry and change the supply side of the equation. And I think there'll be continuity there. I think King Salman won't look at it any differently than King Abdullah, so I don't think that will change. What I'm really focused on right now is will Iran use this as an excuse to cause trouble? Because if they do, that could put a little upward pressure on oil. I'm not predicting that, but it's something I'm watching closely.
Well, let's pick up on that because oil futures right now surge in New York. They are up 3.1% on this, of course, sad news of the king passing. What do you make of that?
Well, I was expecting them to go up a little bit. As I say, the central tendency for oil, given the Saudi objectives, is $50 to $60 a barrel. That's where I expect it to trade. So the 45 was an overshoot. So sort of finding its way back up to 50 comes as no surprise. And obviously some of this is a little bit of a fear trade, if you will, that there could be disruptions. I don't think there'll be any disruptions in the kingdom. I think that will go smoothly. But I'm more concerned about the region. As I say, you've got these flashpoints in Qatar, Bahrain, the eastern provinces of Saudi Arabia, where, again, Iran's ability to cause a sort of Shiite uprising is pretty good.
Right. And let's also talk about other potential uprisings and how this could impact the kingdom, especially in the near future. We look to the south. Right now, Yemen is in complete chaos, It's very difficult to tell who is calling the shots in that nation. And to the north, we know that Saudi Arabia has been building a 600-mile-long fence in an effort to try to keep ISIL from moving into the nation. What are the major concerns right now as we know that the leadership in the kingdom is going to be changing?
Well, I think obviously you put your finger on two of them. So you've got the Islamic State destabilizing things in the north. You've got Al-Qaeda and the Al-Houthi tribes destabilizing things in the south. Now imagine if Iran chooses this moment to destabilize things in the east. They'll have threats on three sides. Now, fortunately, in the west, you've got the Red Sea, and Egypt sort of has Saudi Arabia's back. But there could be, again, this is why I'm concerned about Iran, because Saudi's threatened on all sides, and they're a little bit of a paranoid kingdom to begin with. So this is another reason why the price of oil might go up. You know, oil moves on three vectors. One is normal supply and demand, like any industrial input. The second is inflation, deflation. But the third is geopolitics. Sometimes all three arrows are pointing down. Sometimes they're all pointing up. Right now, at least, the geopolitical arrow appears to be pointing up.
Jim, I want to just ask you one more question, because in following the global economy over the past couple of decades, there is also a terror factor built into the price of oil. Explain that just a bit, and if you anticipate that could be affected in the immediate future. And certainly everybody is paying less for the price of gasoline in the United States and other countries. They're cheering this news, but are you concerned talking about all these possibilities that could happen? Iran causing trouble to the east. We've just outlined the problems in the south and to the northern portion of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, the terror factor, I don't think weighs heavily on the price of oil. It might affect other asset classes, but I mean, terrorism, as horrible as it is not going to shut down oil production. Now, what could shut down oil production, what has from time to time, is war. I mean, what we saw in Libya, what we saw in Iraq temporarily. But interestingly, Iraq has come back on stream. They're up to, I think, about 3 million barrels a day, and that's increasing. And the U.S. Navy will keep the sea lanes in the Persian Gulf open. So that won't affect things very much. But again, if Iran causes trouble in the eastern provinces, then oil could be back on its way to 100. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying that's the thing to watch right now.
Okay, Jim Rickards, we can't thank you enough for bringing us that information from Connecticut. Again, the King of Saudi Arabia passing a change in leadership within the kingdom. The price of oil has been plummeting over the past a year, about 50% in value, but it appears by all means there's going to be a peaceful, smooth transition of power. And Jim Rickards, business expert, been to Saudi Arabia on a number of occasions, doesn't anticipate that is going to cause major disruption in the price, in the flow of oil coming out of the kingdom as well.